Halachat Kaf Aleph. Tzivu Hachamim b'darchei eretz. Hachamim recommended. This is not a halachic statement. That's why Rambam says b'darchei eretz. This is good advice, but it is not a halakha, as we're about to see. Tzivu Hachamim b'darchei eretz shelo yochal adam basar ela lete'avon. A person should eat meat. We're referring to red meat. The word basar, unqualified, if it doesn't say basar off or something like that, which means poultry, then it refers to red meat. A person should eat red meat. He should only do so lete'avon, when he has a desire for this. In other words, a person who feels that he needs a good meat meal with a good healthier portion of meat. This is natural and normal to feel such a thing, because it is the normal human diet of human beings, and always has been. But one doesn't have to eat meat all the time. Too much of many good things is not a good idea. And second of all, meat is expensive. There are cheaper foods. Therefore, Rambam says, the Chachamim learned this from or Medayek, and as an asmachta, they mentioned the pasuk, when your soul desires to eat meat. A person will feel this inclination, and it's perfectly normal and reasonable. And therefore, Rambam says, Dai lo labari lo ochlo, me'arev Shabbat le'arev Shabbat. Literally from Friday to Friday. I think that the meaning probably is Milel Shabbat, Lelel Shabbat. That's what I think it means. There are certain places in Chazal where the term Erev Shabbat refers to Lel Shabbat. In other words, Erev Shabbat technically is Friday. Lel Shabbat is Friday night when it's already Shabbat. Usually these two terms are not interchangeable, but there are certain memirot we see in the Talmud, in a few places where these terms are used interchangeably, and I think that's what Rambam means here. There's no reason to assume that one should eat red meat dafka on Friday afternoon. Bichlal, eating a serious meal on Friday afternoon is not recommended, as we'll see in a moment. And Friday morning makes even less sense, perhaps. So it must mean Leil Shabbat. It could also be Shabbat itself. It doesn't have to be at night. The idea is that once a week is a reasonable frequency for eating meat. But we see also this has to do, and Rambam therefore also juxtaposed these two statements, these two halachot. In the previous statement, Rambam spoke about the Tamid Chachamim living in a measured and calculated way, in a reasonable way, and based on common sense, living within his means. And here Rambam is also taking into account the fact that it's expensive. So Rambam says, if a person has the means, that's fine. It's not a problem. It's not a sur. In any way, it's not a sur. Most people probably don't have the money to eat red meat every day, because there are other things that one has to for which one has to conserve one's resources. And that's fine, that's reasonable, that's rational. But if a person can afford to do so, wishes to do so, okay, it's okay, it's not a problem. In terms of nutrition in general, we have seen before in earlier statements here in Chod De'oth, and perhaps elsewhere, that meat is definitely a normal part of the human diet. From what I have read and studied, there is no doubt in my mind that if we think in terms of nutritional science based on facts and not on strange, irrational motivations, such as compassion, supposedly compassion for animals, shall we say, which is not a rational motivation in such a context. It can be demonstrated scientifically, statistically, very simply, that many more forms of life, including animal, mammalian forms of life that live in fields, are killed by plowing fields in order to grow legumes or vegetables, or all manner of things that we grow in the fields in large quantities. No such activity can be claimed to be free of actually causing directly the death of all kinds of creatures that live in those fields. Certainly the modern, even the old-fashioned plows, etc., but even certainly the modern machinery, they literally tear apart creatures that live in the ground in burrows. They destroy habitats. These are things that those who believe in the vegan religion do not take into account, but these are facts. There's also a fact that if you constantly cultivate and plow, then this depletes the soil. The one thing that rejuvenates the top layer of the soil more than anything else are the droppings of ruminant animals that eat the grass on those fields, or other grass, or whatever it is that is their natural source of food. This replenishes the soil. These are the realities. I stress these things because that I have heard and interacted with certain people. I've heard these. Of course, there are many people in the world who are not at all Jewish or not Torah people who have created this religion of veganism or vegetarianism or what have you. And yes, I know that I am I am not here completely in agreement with a certain ma'amar, a certain article written by Rabbeinu Gadol, Rabbi Avraham Yitzchak Kohen Kugzetzel, about vegetarianism. I personally feel that he was misinformed and somewhat misled about this. We certainly know a great deal more about the truth of nutritional science, if one wants to know the truth, that is, because we also know that there are three kinds of lies: lies, damned lies, and statistics. And almost any set of statistics can be manipulated. That is a quote from Mark Twain, by the way. And in general, science has been corrupted, and this is something that all people need to know. Almost all areas of science today have been corrupted, so that it is very difficult, much more difficult than in the past, to get to the bottom of something, because there are all manner of agendas and science and commercial interests involved. These are the facts, and the person ignores these facts at his peril.
Rabbi?
That should what we have said, therefore, on this matter should be sufficient. Yes.
Would the rabbi also agree that people that are supporting the vegetarian and vegan religions are also have a certain tendency to be? It stems from a certain anti-human tendency, and we could even tie this into the fact that some of them support a well-known movement to enable and legitimize immoral lifestyles, which also are not conducive to the perpetuation of the human race. Think about it; it all goes together.
Unfortunately, there is definitely a tremendous amount of overlap and interface between all these various um, pernicious ideologies and inventions, but it doesn't have to be so. I have spoken to self-described Torah Jews who I think are very well intentioned, but they have bought into the feminist, postmodern, and yes, anti-human. There's definitely an element of anti-humanism in these ideologies. They fall into that trap. They don't realize that they have fallen into this trap. Without wishing to offend anybody, they're not thinking rationally. They are thinking, or as it were, thinking, not really thinking, from the heart, emotionally. This is a feminine trait. This is it's very good that women are as they are, but men are not supposed to be as women, nor vice versa. When one understands these things from a rational perspective, and when one looks into the real facts, one sees the fallacies and the flaws in all of these claims, in all these various definitions.
Yeah, I can also say, based on personal experience, that there are a few people I know that I have the distinct impression that they channel all their love to animals or to their pet dog, and it's almost as though they don't desire to give that love to human beings. I'm not against dogs, and I have a dog, but I feel that some people have hostility to human beings, and showing this excessive love to animals is a type of escapism from human beings. I could be wrong, but that's my impression.
I would agree with you. I too have witnessed these things and felt these things. There is nothing wrong with having a pet. Many things can be said for having a pet in the family, and I know there are people who there are certain kinds of religious Jews who shun animals such as dogs or cats, etc., in the house. This is not based on anything rational or anything Torah either, based on Torah either. Rabbi Pernicious ben Yair, and the famous story regarding his donkey should prove the point. A donkey is a hayat tume'ah, and yet we see Rabbi Pernicious ben Yair rode a donkey. The same is for riding a horse or a camel, or using these animals for various commercial purposes. Donkeys and camels were the trucks, so to speak, the engines that moved merchandise from place to place, or building materials. Of course, normal human life has always involved interaction with animals of all kinds. The fact that we are not to eat certain animals has nothing to do with having a pet or using that animal for our various purposes. So to return to the matter at hand, the claim that it is immoral or improper that human beings feed themselves and thrive based on animal-based products is spurious in every way. It has never been the norm amongst human beings. There's almost no culture in existence or in earlier times that was based on such a vegetarian ideal or vegan ideal. Parts of the subcontinent of India, perhaps there is such a culture, that is also rooted apparently in Avodah Zarah. That is why the cows are holy and things of this nature. But as Rambam discusses in Moreh Nevuchim, but essentially this has never been the way of human beings, and it can be demonstrated quite plainly and simply that there are many essential nutrients that people cannot readily obtain and absorb from purely non-animal sources. There is the reality of the existence of a certain vitamin or mineral in foods, and there's also the question of absorption and how bio available it is. So you may have iron in certain plant sources, but the iron in those plant sources is such that it's almost impossible for the body to utilize it. Whereas the iron in animal-based products is much more available and therefore necessary and helpful, and it's necessary. And the same is true for B12, and the same is true for other elemental substances. It is well documented that some people on vegan diets become unwell, chronic illnesses. There are many stories, well documented cases, many of women, for example, on a vegan diet, ceasing to menstruate or to experience all manner of issues with regards to female reproduction. Anyway, I think enough said. Those who wish to look into these things, and I encourage people to look into these things, one has to know where to look. One has to know how to winnow the chaff from the grain. I would mention offhand an Australian doctor, very highly qualified doctor, by the name of Dr. Paul Mason. If you want to look him up, you will find what he has to say interesting. There's also an American psychiatrist, a woman by the name of Georgia Ede, E-D-E. She has also written and spoken on these subjects. Of course, there are many others. Those are a couple that come to mind. At any rate, if it were true that veganism, vegetarianism, etc., were an ideal in the Torah, then you would certainly expect that Chazal would be aware of this, and they would inform us and encourage us to do this. We see no such encouragement. We see no such discussion anywhere at all. And the Rambam here before us is a proof of that fact. Rambam is, of course, quoting Chazal, as always. If one wants to begin discussing the beginning of Sefer Bereshith, certain statements there, to Adam Rishon, to Noah, etc., well, that is a separate discussion. But how people imagine that those situations, even if their interpretation of the Pesukim, even if it is valid, which is also not always so clear, how that could be relevant and applicable to our situation, I do not know.
Thank you, Rabbi Bar-Hayim. We would like to encourage our viewers to share these videos with friends and send in your responses. We would also like to suggest the following opportunity to our viewers. If you identify with Rabbi Bar-Hayim's message and would like to sponsor or dedicate a video interview with the rabbi in honor or memory of a loved one, if you would like to obtain Birkon Nusach Eretz Yisrael or invite the rabbi for a speaking engagement, please email us at office@machonshilo.org.